What is the ideal profile of a CEO in the current board?
Someone who is in touch with reality, knows about the big questions of this time, and for instance knows about all the issues that we see at the World Economic Forum, but is also in touch with movements in society, so that he knows to bridge. That is an ideal CEO. And in the company, it is someone who walks the talk and do that together with her or his people, and is engaged.
Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful people around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Professor Annemieke Roobeek. Annemieke, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Frits.
Allow me to introduce Annemieke. She's a professor of strategy and transformation management at Nijrode Business University. She's also the youngest female professor ever in the Netherlands for technology and economy. Now, she does international comparative research, such as an EU project on innovation and sustainability, is a regular speaker with institutes like INSEAD and Fontainebleau, is member of supervisory boards like with the Dutch ABN AMRO Bank, Royal Dutch Airlines, energy company Eneco, EBIT, but is also an entrepreneur and founder of companies like MeetingMoreMinds and GrwNxt. So again, Annemieke, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much, Frits. Yeah. Very happy to be in this program.
Yeah. Now, in my introduction, I mentioned you are the youngest female professor. How did that help you, or how did that actually stop you from doing things?
A good question. Well, in 1989, perhaps you can recall, but that was really a time when the new technologies came up. And I started already at the end of the 70s working on the new techno-economic paradigm and combining technologies. And I was very active in writing future scenarios. And my background is international relations, economics, and political science. So I could see things much more from a systemic point of view. And I think that particularly at the end of the 80s, there was a time where much more openness came for new insights. And I got this first position of a chair of technology and economy in the Netherlands, although I was 29. But I had done already many things. And I think that it has helped me a lot. I've never been afraid saying what I have as a vision, because I always can underpin it with analysis. And therefore, I'm the researcher. But I'm also the woman who is on a mission and wants to put concepts into action. And that action research, that's what I very much started also with my first chair as a professor for technology and economy, but later on also as a professor for metropolitan affairs, and therefore my love for megacities, but also the complexity part, for which I had a chair at the University of Amsterdam. I'm still at Nijrode for strategy and transformation management. And I love to have the combination of, on the one hand, thinking and working on the big vision, but also to translate that into action so that entrepreneurs or NGOs or people in society can work with it. And therefore I speak a lot as well, to sharpen my mind, but also to engage with others.
Did I just hear you explain what that mission is you alluded to share that experience?
Yeah, well, I think that if you look at the current, at the red current in my career, you can always see that it is on innovation. So don't be afraid of what is new. but know what you can do with it and how these new possibilities can fit to big problems. And therefore, for me, innovation and sustainability are two parts of the same coin. So even when I did my PhD in the 80s, I worked on, what are these systemic problems in terms of sustainability, but also is mass production the answer, or is it causing so many problems? Or fossil energy, is that an enabler, or is that in fact causing more problems, as we saw and see every day right now with climate change? And I think that my mission is indeed to start the dialogue on these big issues, and then to ask the questions, because that's the dialogue, to ask the questions and to have the conversation, but also, because you do research with your teams, also to test out live the potential of the solutions you have in mind, and then how to do that with other people, because the questions are too big to work on a solution on your own.
So what I'm hearing you saying is it's great to have your head in the clouds, to be a thinker, but you also have to have your feet in the mud. You have to do it. So you have to combine that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Now I was wondering, as a professor of strategy and transformation management, at the moment, we see the world experiencing quite a big change. The World Economic Forum calls this the fourth industrial wave. How significant is this change according to you? And actually, what triggered it? Where did it come from?
Yeah, well, I think the trigger is already going on for more than 25 years. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we are already in a transition for more than 25 years. You are an expert in digital transformation yourself, and you've seen that, you've experienced that, you have been a catalyzer for that as well. But what makes it different right now is that we are now in a period of time where many of, let's say, transitions that go on already for 20, 25 years come together in a very short period of time. And Corona is only, it is a kind of amplifier, but it was there already, all these transitions. But when these things come together, then you get the big jump, and that's the transformation. And that's why it is so interesting to, from a strategic point of view, that from a strategy point of view, you can look forward, but you know what was behind you. So you know in what kind of transitions you are. And from a strategy point of view, you know when to jump. And now we have to jump. We have to jump in terms of climate change, energy, type of productions, the way we produce things, circularity, healthy society, how we organize education, how we reorganize settings of work, ways of work. All these things come together. Yeah, and it's on a global scale. That's the transformation we're in right now.
That sounds quite scary with so much changing that I can imagine that organizations, CEOs, I know you're a member of a number of advisory boards. I would be quite scared and concerned if I were them with all those changes. So what do you see happening in your environment?
Yeah, well, I think here also leadership comes around the corner. Here you see a big shift. On the one hand, for instance, I would say the newly appointed CEO of Eneco, the energy company where I'm on the non-executive board, he is someone, I would say, with that new vision and the creativity to work with partly the existing team to go for a one planet plan that goes much farther than any energy company in the world, And at the same time, I also see companies and many CEOs who think, oh, well, perhaps not now, perhaps in a few years, let's call it a transition and let's postpone. But in times of transformation, you can't postpone. Then you're out because your people know that you're not doing the right thing. Because CEOs have to rely on their people, and the people are people who are all knowledgeable. You know, you can't say, well, these were people who no. In modern companies, the people who work there have more knowledge than the CEO, and they feed the CEO. And if the CEO is not taking up all these signals that are there already from a longer time, it's not the right CEO. And if that CEO is not able to make the jump and oversee the systemic changes that have to occur at the same time, he's not the right leader, because he cannot engage with the subject, let alone with his people.
If you are a CEO and you're describing the situation, how often do you see a CEO being honest and realize, look, I'm not the right person anymore for this job?
Not so often.
Yeah.
But there we also have responsibility as non-executive members. So the supervisory board also has a role in this, you know, that we have to, we are responsible for the long-term view. Mm-hmm. And we have to see whether the CEO, but also members in the board, the executive committee, whether they are capable of fulfilling the tasks, particularly in this period of time. And sometimes then you have to take harsh decisions. Yeah.
Okay, so what does it take? What is the ideal profile of a CEO in the current board?
Someone who is in touch with reality, knows about the big questions of this time, and for instance knows about all the issues that we see at the World Economic Forum, but is also in touch with movements in society, so that he knows to bridge. That is an ideal CEO. And in the company, it is someone who walks the talk and do that together with her or his people, and is engaged. So it's not only, this is the strategy, but let's work on the execution, and we need you to make that happen. And if that latter part is not there, or if the person is not able to connect, then it's not the right leader for this transformational time.
Okay, so it is about engaged leadership. That's the future.
Yes, yeah. And engaged leadership is not only for the CEO. It is, in fact, engagement is an extremely important capability or skill for which you need to collaborate, to network, to have an open mind, to work cross-silo, to connect people in your company and outside and inside from the different lines. And in fact, to do that in a 3D mode. And I think that is what we ask. Very often you see that people in the organization, particularly knowledge workers, and younger people know much better how to do this. Whereas sometimes you think that people in the higher they come, the more they have to learn how to do this.
Now, I read somewhere in an article that you speak of a new role which the organization needs, the Weber.
The Weber, yes.
Yeah, can you please expand on it? What is a Weber? Is that what you just described?
Well, no. The Weber is, I developed the word Weber when I worked on networking already in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. And the networks of networks go over into ecosystems. And that is something what you see coming up in the 90s. And then companies don't want it. And now it is extremely in to talk about ecosystems. But what is essential in developing networks and networks of networks into ecosystems is that you have people in the organization. It doesn't need to be the CEO, preferably not the CEO, but that you have several people in the organization, and sometimes also people from outside, who are able to connect content with people, with human capacities, who connect the ideas with the execution, who can lead not one project but several at the same time, much more in a programmatic way, so that you can make that systems change. And the Weber is someone who is what I call a horizontal networking leader, because it is not a hierarchy. It is someone who needs to work with the different levels in a horizontal way. What makes it special, the role of the Weber, is that the Weber is not only, let's say, the busy bee, from working with a content, but also with a strategic view, but he or she or the group has direct access to the top, because they have a mandate to operate. And very often, when you compare it with just a project leader, then a project leader may do one thing.
Okay.
But here, you work on big questions with many parties, and then you need mandate, and not to go back for everything. And a very important role of the Weber, and that's also why he or she is also a diplomat, is that he or she can de-escalate. And that means that the top can go on and work with each other, but the execution is guaranteed. And that is very important, certainly if you know that more than 80% of strategy is never executed.
Can you learn this, or is this more an attitude, part of somebody's character?
Well, it's an interesting question, Fritz, because when I explain it, for instance, during my lectures at Nijrode, then there are always people so happy when they say, "Oh, but that's what I do," but I didn't know the word for it. Yeah. So it is something, that people do who already are in that mindset of networking and ecosystems and organizing the big changes.
Yeah. And I can imagine by giving it a label, you empower people. Hey, I'm being recognized for what I do.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to learn some of the skills. And for instance, for one very large international financial player based in the Netherlands, we did a program where we learned the skills for engagement leaders, but they are partly based on what do you need as a Weber. So what is then networking? Networking is not just giving your business card, but working with each other on something that has a meaning, and collaboration inside, outside, thinking beyond the silos, and not to be afraid to do something where you work together with others, where your manager has nothing to say about. Yeah, so that's the empowerment you addressed earlier, but also being the connection between the often very general lines of strategy put on paper, often by external advisors, and then reproduced by the CEO, and then doing the execution. And what we did there was empower people throughout the world. It was a worldwide project we did in the past 3/4 years. But we empowered the people with management on my side as a co-host, as a kind of session as we do now, but as a co-host, to engage people to come up with those, let's say, strategic projects that could be executed in the different regions of the world, but that would add up to the execution of the entire strategy. And that was fantastic. And it still is fantastic.
You just answered already a question I had. I think you answered it. No worries. In the sense, I was wondering about cultural differences. You see around the world different leadership styles. How does culture play an impact?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's not one size fits all. At the same time, what we did is that all the participants, and these were about 200 in this project from all over the world, they got regional assessments. So assessments where 80% of what we tested was more or less the same, but 20% was specific for those parts of the world, taking into account the cultural differences, but also to award that and not to say, well, everything is equal. No, we think that it's important. So, for instance, for the Asia Pacific, it is very important to think less in hierarchies, and really to open up for collaboration. But they are so good in innovation, and when you then stress the innovative part, then the other elements come as well. Whereas, for instance, in the Americas, you touch up other elements, and in Europe, the EMEA part, we know that collaboration is easier. It is more or less a thing what we easier can do. And in the US, it's really the top says, and we think in tasks. Whereas innovation is not a task; it is it is a collective a challenge, and these kind of things you can test before, and that's also what we did, so that we were sure that we had the right people in the project as the future engagement leaders.
Okay, now knowing the futures of this show, they we're probably very interested in results of this research. Is there anything where people can read up on that?
Yeah, well, we are now writing some articles, but also some interviews are done. And I would say look at our website, MeetingMoreMinds, and you will certainly learn more from it. Yeah. Great.
And that's actually a nice bridge to another part of your background, because so far we've talked about your role as a professor, as an academic, the supervisory role, but you're also an entrepreneur yourself. And well, we happen to know each other from years ago when you founded MeetingMoreMinds, and I found that a fascinating company because it was so ahead of its time. Can you explain to the audience a little bit what MeetingMoreMinds is?
Yeah, well, MeetingMoreMinds is it's a smaller organization, an advisory, but it's specialized in developing networks around innovative or novel activities with more than one business. So it really is about networking and going beyond your own, because the underlying thought is innovation is a collaborative action, and you can learn from each other when you work with each other, when you invest into each other. So MeetingMoreMinds was indeed having that open mind and work with each other. And that's also what we still do today. So we were founded in 1999, and we see that our ideas and also the evidence we produced in the past decades is really paying off right now, because it seems that the majority of, let's say, business or even public sector thinks, this is really what we need now. Yes, but I think MeetingMoreMinds was really the front runner for networking and developing ecosystems long before it became en vogue. But we know how and why and what you need to do. And I think putting things in practice and not only staying in the ivory tower is really what I am and what I would like to keep doing. Yeah.
But also what I hear you say, advising any entrepreneur out there, any academic out there, do both to put it in practice.
Yeah, I think that's what I very much like about Nine Road, that they very much want us not only to thinking and lecture about academic concepts, but also to be active in the field.
Feet in the mud. Now, I know you've set up a number of organizations. What was the latest endeavor? What is the latest endeavor?
That's GrwNxt. And
GrwNxt. What does that do?
GrwNxt is in fact reinventing plant science. with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and image recognition, and doing that with the latest technologies. We develop beautiful growth modules that are really a jewel when you have them, for instance, in your hotel reception or in your hospital when people come in, or in an office building. And what you see is that extremely, in fact, a novel kind of greens with many vitamins, minerals, and proteins are growing there just in front of your eyes. And then within meters, you will get it on your plate. And then the nice thing is you don't need to eat much of it because it is so rich that you get all the natural nutrients inside your body without any pesticide or anything else. It's pure nature, but grown in the most digital way as possible.
I have to get my head around this, using AI to grow plants. Can you explain to the audience just a little bit, and also to me, how do you use AI to grow a plant?
Well, with AI, we can detect much better what the growth phases are a plant goes through.
Okay.
And very often in traditional plant science, you say, well, there are 4 growth phases. And with AI, you have a lens where you see things much better, closer. And why is that important? Because there are tens of dozens of growth phases. And what we can do with the latest LED technology for lighting, combined with the nutrients to feed the water in these hydroponic systems, we can make what we call dynamic digital recipes. Therefore, we need AI, but we also have to learn the computer to work with the input of the AI about the growth of the plant. And with the image recognition, what we do is that we also can more or less virtually see the growing of the plants and the health of the plants and the happiness of the plants. When you combine these technologies, you have a new core to redefine plant science. So, and that's what we do in an integrated IoT system. And that IoT system is, of course, connected to the cloud. And in the coming decade, you will see many thousands of places where you have these beautiful growth rooms, these growth modules. Looks nice, and people get their food in a very healthy way, without distribution, without damaging the earth, with a very low food imprint. So it's very sustainable, but it's also an answer to safety and security. And that is new, and that was not possible 10 years ago, because now we can make the combinations of the technologies from AI to light. But we see also that I just got a mail this before we had this talk of someone working at airports, catering for airports, and he said, this is so important. But now we can feed megacities, and we can show people all over the world that healthy food is just available, accessible. And I think that's extremely interesting to work on. You know, it's one of the big questions I had, where I combine many of the areas of science where I worked in, and this is feeding megacities. It's combining my knowledge about metropolitan affairs, my technology part, my societal part, and the complexity part. It all comes together, and we do it in an ecosystem with many parties, from the green tech up to finance, from the hospitality up to the AI community. And this is really the collaborative action to give the world something I think we need.
This is where Meeting More Minds comes to life.
Yeah, well, Meeting More Minds was in fact the incubator
Yeah.
for GrwNxt. Yeah, and GrwNxt is the spin out of Meeting More Minds. Yeah, but we could never do this if we could not think big, and if we could not connect to so many parties, and if we could not get the opportunity to speak, you know, and to go on stage and to have the dialogues and to sharpen the mind. But we got, as I said, we got the AI for Good award for the food track.
The AI for Good, that's been set up by the ITU, the International Telecom Union of the United Nations.
Yeah, exactly.
So, congratulations, well done.
Yeah, and it was a fantastic experience for the entire GrwNxt team because we got a lot of support from all these experts, you know, from the universities, but also from the big companies, from the Danones to the Googles, the Microsofts, also the Johns Hopkins University. Really very interesting and also, you know, challenging. But we also got rewards for our R&D efforts for the dynamic digital recipes, for a totally new kind of robotic arm we are now developing for our modules, and we call her the ballerina. And I think that's also the feminization of technology.
I am certain you have touched upon so many topics where I'm certain people want to know much, much more about.
Oh, happy to talk further.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the show. So Annemieke, I'm really, really honored and want to thank you for sharing your insights. As an academic, we need engaged leadership. Companies should look at what a Weber can do for their organization. And you've demonstrated some great examples as an entrepreneur helping to improve the world. So Annemieke, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.